Welcome back to the Demonautica channel, your portal into the paranormal, and welcome to Ghoulish Grub, where we cook up history's most haunted tales. This is the very first episode in the series, and what better way to start it off with than cooking Lizzie Borden's famous meatloaf. If you end up liking this video and you want to see more just like this in the series and more paranormal investigations, please make sure to like and subscribe so that we can continue to grow our Phantom fam. Let's start cooking up Lizzie Borden's meatloaf. It sounds weird. Lizzie Borden's meatloaf. Lizzie Borden was born in Fall River, Massachusetts to Andrew and Sarah Borden. But Sarah, Lizzie's mother, passed away when she was only 2 years old. With her mother passed away and Andrew Borden being a very busy man, her older sister Emma took on a bit of a motherly role. And later Lizzie would claim that Emma was the only parental figure she felt she really had. Their father was a very wealthy but very frugal man and rarely gave the girls any money to go on social outings, and this ended up making them feel like they were outcasts. Lizzie had only one close friend named Alice, but despite this, she was described as kind, thoughtful, and compassionate. She would bake chocolate cake for the visitors from the church, give candy to children, and even taught Sunday school. She was also involved in women's charity work, animal rescues, and even raised her own flock of pigeons in her barn. Resentment for their father grew when he gave a very expensive house to their stepmother's sister when he had always been stingy with them. To appease them, Andrew would give the deed of the house to the two girls, but since during that time women weren't allowed to live alone, he ended up buying it back from them. After a trip to Europe, Lizzie started to realize how disconnected she was from her childhood and saw the childhood that she could have had. She became distant from her parents, refusing to speak with them or even share meals with them. This lasted for years. But in June 1892, her father would go into the barn and kill the pigeons she had been raising with a hatchet. This, of course, upset Lizzie deeply. By this time, Andrew was in his 70s, and Lizzie was trying to make peace with the fact that he could soon pass away. But she was worried that all of his wealth would end up going to their stepmother, Abby. Now that we have a little backstory, let's talk about the days leading up to the murders. August 2nd, 1892, the whole household fell ill. It was assumed that it was food poisoning from maybe some rotten food they had. August 3rd, 1892, their Uncle John would arrive unexpectedly, and Lizzie would talk to her friend Alice about how she felt very paranoid about something that could possibly happen to her father. That night, Andrew and their Uncle John got into a little bit of an argument. Lizzie said she was feeling unwell and chose to stay upstairs in her room and not see her uncle. It's also important to note that her sister Emma was on a trip during this time. August 4th, 1892, John left early after breakfast, and Andrew would go off to work. Lizzie, still feeling unwell, would stay at home with their maid Bridget. She ordered Bridget to clean the windows outside, even though it was an exceptionally hot day. Don't you love these sounds of mixing meatloaf with your hands? This is quite the sensory experience, by the way. And makes those good, you already know the rest. Later that day, Andrew returned home from work early to a bolted door. He knocked on the door and Bridget came and got it for him. And as they came in, they started to hear laughter upstairs. Later, Lizzie would come down and tell her father that a letter arrived for their stepmother Abby, saying that a friend had fell ill, and so Abby went to go visit her. With his wife not being there for him to visit, Andrew would go take a nap on the living room couch. And Bridget decided after a long, hard day of work out in the heat that she would go up to the attic and rest as well. While everyone else was resting, Lizzie would go to the barn to look for a fishing lure for her upcoming fishing trip that very weekend. According to her, she was only in the barn for 10 to 15 minutes, and during this time, her father was brutally murdered with a hatchet, hit in the face 11 times, and he was described as looking unrecognizable. His nose was missing, and his eyeballs cut in half. She screamed, alerting Bridget, and would run next door to Miss Churchill's house, where she would say, "Oh, Miss Churchill, please do come. Somebody has killed Father." When searching for Abby, Bridget found her in the guest room, face down with multiple hatchet wounds in the back of her head. When the police came to investigate, they noticed how Andrew's wounds were fresh, but Abby's blood had already dried. This showed them that Abby's death would have happened approximately 2 hours before Andrew's. Emma was out of town on her trip, eliminating her as a suspect, and Bridget had no motives, eliminating her as well. Lizzie was the only one in the house that would gain anything, making her the prime suspect. Lizzie would be arrested and put into a holding cell of a women's prison on August 11th of 1892. And almost a year later, in June of 1893, trials would be held in front of a grand jury. Despite a thorough search, the police didn't find any splattered blood on Lizzie's dresses. In fact, the only evidence that they ended up finding was the blade of the axe, without a handle. However, Alice would testify during these trials, claiming she saw Lizzie burning one of her dresses. When asked about it, Lizzie said that she just had paint stains on the dress and decided to get rid of it. Lizzie's questioning was inconsistent. She couldn't stick to the same story. But it would soon be found that her doctor had prescribed her morphine to calm her nerves. And this could have clouded her memory. Also at trial, a pharmacist claimed that Lizzie came in to buy potassium cyanide. However, since the autopsy didn't show any poison in their systems, only evidence of food poisoning, this wasn't seen as evidence. The jury, unable to believe that a well-respected Sunday school teacher could have committed this crime, ended up finding her not guilty after 90 minutes of deliberation. And Lizzie Borden was free. Lizzie and Emma would inherit their father's wealth and purchase a grand home they would call the Maplecroft Mansion. That didn't quite cut like I was hoping it would. They hired maids and a driver to live out their days comfortably. It's so crumbly. The presentation's not gonna be good. Her house would often get egged, and the children came up with a jump rope rhyme that they would sing outside of her windows.
Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, gave her father 41.
Lizzie got involved in local plays and would host grand parties for the cast and crew. It was then that rumors swirled about her having a relationship with actress Nance O'Neill. Lizzie being in a lesbian relationship was very frowned upon at the time, especially for a Christian woman. This, coupled with the fact that she might have killed her parents, made her sister Emma want to flee and live somewhere else, never seeing Lizzie again. Lizzie lived alone in her Maplecroft mansion until she died at the age of 66. When she passed, she gave most of her estate to an animal rescue and left thousands for her close friends and relatives. The case remains unsolved to this day, with theories spreading that Lizzie committed the murders naked, so that she wouldn't have any blood splattering on her clothing. Or she committed the murders in a different dress, hid that dress away until she could later burn it. Some of the other theories include Bridget or their Uncle John being responsible. What are your thoughts? Did Lizzie Borden really kill her family in cold blood after a traumatic childhood? Or was there someone else at play? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. And now we know more about this case, let's eat. So I'm not really a fan of Meatloaf. So I'm not sure how this is gonna turn out, but let's try it. It's definitely interesting. The plate looked a little boring with just the meatloaf, so I added some potatoes and asparagus as well. So I guess if I don't like it too much, at least I have some other options too. What is so interesting about this is that this is Lizzie Borden's very own recipe. She had a handwritten recipe card that is now owned by the Fall River Historical Society. So it kind of takes you back in time, which may not be a good thing. Thank you for joining me as we learned more about Lizzie Borden and the infamous axe killings. If you ended up liking this video and want to see more in this series, please make sure to like and subscribe so that we can continue to grow our Phantom fam. I have a lot of awesome haunted recipes for you guys in the future, so stay tuned for those. And we have more big collabs coming up soon. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.